2024 Appropriation Bill. Senate Standing Committees commence submission of reports.
Renewed war against illicit drugs as Nigerian Armed Forces introduces compulsory test during screening.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on encouraging local content development in Nigeria's steel sector.
Let's drive the context of our conversation today with this age-long Chinese proverb. Out of the hottest fire comes the strongest steel. Indeed, every one of us go through vicissitude of life, but it is actually the crucibles that life throws at us that makes us stronger and forge ahead.
Interesting. Elders and proverbs.
Yes.
You're absolutely right, Ademola. And same goes for some inanimate objects, or should I say resources that drive national development around the world. And talking about steel, it is one resource that undergoes various stages of fire to get refined.
Steel is an alloy of various elements, but mostly iron and carbon. Steel contains less than 2% of carbon and 1% manganese and small amount of silicon, phosphorus, sulfur and oxygen.
Steel is considered the world's most important material used in the construction and engineering subsector. It is used in almost every aspect of our lives. Just look around you, from your homes, in your kitchen, your refrigerator, washing machines, clothes, your pressing iron, even airplanes, your cars, ships. You will find traces of steel. And, you know, Ademola.
Yes, you're right.
You know, when you talk about steel and where you can find it, I mean, it's just countless. And that goes to show the importance, you know, of that particular material in this country.
And that is why we're discussing it this morning.
Yeah.
The steel industry is also very strategic for technological and economic development in Nigeria. It is vital for developing linkages with all other sectors of the economy and serves as the backbone of industrialization in Nigeria.
And according to available data, in 2013 alone, the world's raw steel production was estimated at 1.6 billion tons, higher than other engineering materials, while production of the next most important engineering metal, is aluminium, which was about 47 million tons. And the reasons are very simple. They are relatively low cost in making, forming and processing. It's two raw materials, talking about iron ore and scrap, are in abundance, and its unparalleled range of mechanical properties.
Unfortunately, for the past few decades, the sector has witnessed dramatic decline, basically because of low demand and high cost of production. Nigeria is a steel-dependent country relying on imports to augment production capacity of 2.2 billion tons, despite housing over 30 steel manufacturers. Steel import estimate is still put at more than $3 billion. Scraps and billet are still being imported from China.
Absolutely sad. And experts say to revive the steel sector in Nigeria, it would require a multifaceted approach. Obviously, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu realized the importance of the steel sector to the renewed hope agenda, and the reason that the Ministry of Steel is now a stand-alone ministry.
You're right, Lenre, precisely. So what is the place of steel industry in federal government's renewed hope agenda? How can issues of corruption and infrastructure debt bedeviling the sector be addressed? Join us as we engage our reputable guest, including the Minister of State for Steel, on Good Morning Nigeria today. I am Ademola Adeoye. Thanks for joining us.
And it's a pleasure to also welcome you to the program this morning. I am Ian Ray John, and today's edition is bumper packed, I must tell you. We have other segments to come on the program, talking about the morning news. Would have the newspaper review. Chukudi will be right here with us, and we'll take a bit on sports and the foreign scene. But for now, let's take a breather right here. Zenret Dingmom will lead us with the highlight of the morning news. Zenret, good morning to you.
Good morning, Yeri and Ademola. And thanks for joining us on the morning news. President Bola Tinubu has directed the new board of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, to prioritize the welfare of the people in oil-producing areas and Nigerians at large, even as they target profitability, high production level and good governance in the energy sector. The president gave the directive as he inaugurated the NNPCL board at the State House.
In the PIA, the members of cabinet and your good self should sit as a team and look at what can we do differently to bring up profitability, production, high level, and good governance.
And as the National Assembly sustains efforts to see to the passage of the 2024 appropriation bill before the end of this month, standing committees have commenced submission of reports before the Committee on Appropriation.
From January 1st to December 31st of every year. And this 10th Senate or 10th National Assembly, we do not intend to change the tradition. We want to sustain the tradition. And in sustaining the tradition, we need to ensure that this budget is passed into law before the end of the year.
For Africa to reach the targets set in the Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs), achieve inclusive economic transformation and build resilience against economic shocks, there must be a deliberate action towards leveraging the continent's natural endowments. This was the position of economic experts at the launch of the 2023 Economic Report on Africa and 2023 Africa Sustainable Development Report at the United Nations House in Abuja.
We looked at how COVID-19 impacted African economies.
I believe that the report will serve to tool us all further to prepare for economic shocks and untether us further from the volatilities of being commodity-based economies.
And in security, the Nigerian police force says it has successfully rescued 134 kidnapped victims, arrested 375 kidnappers, as well as 578 armed robbery suspects in various operations across the country in the last 3 months. Inspector General of Police Kayode Egbetokun made the disclosure at the 2023 End-of-Year Strategic Management Conference in Abuja.
Intelligence-led policing will remain a cornerstone of our efforts, and I urge you all to boost your intelligence capacity and leverage on cutting-edge technology to dismantle criminal elements terrorizing our communities.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Armed Forces have introduced compulsory drugs tests during military screening and intake. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, who announced this while on a working visit to the office of the Chairman National Drugs Law Enforcement Agency (NDLEA), Mohammed Buba Marwa, says the military will fully support the renewed war against illicit drugs and commended NDLEA for the successes recorded under the leadership of Brigadier General Mohammed Buba Marwa.
We will not shield anybody. We have made a number of arrests while in the northeast. Our checkpoints and all of we pick them up and we prosecute them.
Drugs are central to criminalities. It is for this reason that the NDLEA have been very ferocious and aggressive.
And that concludes the morning news. Ian Ray and Ademola will be back for the rest of the program after this break.
It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. Up next is newspaper review.
You're welcome back. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria, coming to you live on the network service of the NTA. And we have a newspaper reviewer here. Chooks, good morning.
Hello, Demola. How are you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
It's good to be alive. I'm well. Yere, beaming from ear to ear.
Good morning.
What's the good news?
Good to be alive.
You're smart. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
So we go.
Let's take a look at the leadership newspaper here. The lead story: Tinubu brokers fresh truce in Rivers crisis. The riders, warring parties asked to withdraw all litigations. Fubara to recognize 27 pro-Wike lawmakers. Impeachment proceeding against governor to be dropped. Assembly members can sit anywhere. Beautiful story. Details on page 4
you know, we
of the
discussed
leadership.
that, just, was it 2 days ago?
Last week?
Yeah, on Good Morning Nigeria.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing that the president has waded into the, the situation and trying to calm, the situation in the Rivers State.
The good thing for us is we have a man who believes in dialogue as president of Nigeria. When I dropped the word negotiator, Tinubu is a negotiator when he came in. Some people may not have understood me. It is the man's nature. He would roar when he needs to roar and bring the stake down. But he makes it a last resort. He exhausts all he needs to tell you, this is what we're trying to do and all that. When you have such a leader, you
need to applaud him,
really. Yes.
And
the River State matter. Let me tell you, at the end of the day, River State people are going to sit down and say enough is enough and solve their problem. Thank God Mr. President is helping them. It's not court bars to anybody from by-election to replace 27 lawmakers. You hear all those things. Those are the theatricals of the matter. At the end of the day, they will sit down and say, this is how we go. Yeah. And we pray that Providence.
For me, the excitement about all of this is that the grasses can finally breathe now. You know what they say, when two elephants fight, the grasses suffer. So the people of Rivers, of course, this is good news.
We said last week, the State House of Assembly that has been demolished, who suffers it?
Exactly.
The money that should have gone into creating more fish ponds for those unemployed boys and girls. You now channel it to go and how many people have been prosecuted over burning down that place? Impunity reigns supreme in this country. We can't deceive Providence. We have to help ourselves.
Yes. Let's take a look at small headlines right here on the leadership. We have varsity workers defer on a centralized payment system. And then this one is on page 19. Okay, I think I should look away from that story now. We have this one here. Police arrest 806 suspected kidnappers, rapists in 10 weeks. And details on page 17. And finally, we have Egypt Sisi wins third term as president. These are some of the stories you can find on the leadership this morning. So, Ademola, should I go with the Daily Times?
Please go ahead.
All right, so let's hit the Daily Times quickly now. Of course, the lead story everywhere is the good news, to Rivers people. Tinubu reconciles Fubara Wike at second try. That's, cheering news today. And we have other stories here. Federal government to respect press freedom, divergent views. Tinubu tells UNPAN. And then we have Chief of Air Staff urges troops to sustain high pressure on terrorists and others. You can find details on page 5 of the Daily Times. Finally, this morning, we have 15 January 2024 is JAMB application form sales date. Registration fee is 6,200 naira. Okay, that's a free a free announcement for JAMB.
Well, yeah, it's important because, you know, the younger ones will take advantage of that.
Yes.
Please, let's be clear on this.
Yeah.
When something becomes very topical,
yes,
it becomes news before it becomes a commercial item.
Yes,
please, it's very important.
It is.
Sort this out.
It is news.
It is news.
It is
you
news.
know what it means to look. It matters to people's pockets.
Yeah.
What JAMB charges. You understand?
It also matters to the establishment's pocket what comes in.
No,
oh well.
Anyway,
you would always have that, you know, slight whatever with the commercial department, you know. But please, as news
but
people,
news is
there's
news.
News first there.
News first.
It matters
before,
to millions
before
of our young people.
Yes, before commercial.
That's it.
Now I have the Daily Trust, and below the nameplate of the Daily Trust, we have these abducted 150 Maru villagers, 3 dead as bandits remain silent on ransom. Chooks, you know, we discussed this issue of insecurity in the country yesterday, and
exactly
we have this news again today. I don't know. Is it because of the festive period or?
No, the festive period is adding to it, but there is a subsisting case of insecurity in Nigeria. But we must not dismiss the fact or denigrate the fact that our security people are trying as much as they can to curtail it. But these people have become so ungovernable, you know, that they form up things in themselves. I don't know whether it's drugs, whatever it is. The solution to it is everybody stay vigilant. We said some yesterday, say something, say something. Don't leave it to the police alone to do. Many of us know the people who are criminals in our society. We do not let out the word on them. And we keep on praying to God to jump down from heaven. Maybe take an AK-47 and wipe them out. It doesn't work that way. God will help those who help themselves.
Where is that? It's not in the Bible.
Demola, you're still there?
Yes, I'm still there.
One other thing. Oh, sorry. Then you...
Okay, let me go on. Bayelsa, Kebbi, Taraba, others can't survive without FAC disbursement. That report is on page 23. Tinubu pledges to review policies on newspaper industry. The story can be found on page 6. Not out of school children population time bomb. Federal government 680,000 in Kaduna, over 500,000 in Gombe. Bauchi mobilizing resources for educational projects. Bala Muhammad, 3,963 teachers in public schools fail qualifying exam nationwide. Over 50% of private school teachers unqualified. Wow. That's
unfortunate.
That's really, really unfortunate.
You must run regular checks on the competence of those people whom we require, not just teachers. There is a general attitude towards a slide, towards it's not indolence. It doesn't really matter to Nigerian people anymore what the quality of the person talking to them is. And that's going to rub off on the kind of people we become at the end of the day. It is good to be good.
Yeah.
You must make sure that people are diligent, people are hardworking, people are emphatic on the things that will raise our virtues to the high heavens. Just this morning, I was very, you saw me coming, I was very happy looking, wasn't I?
Yeah.
I gave an envelope to a road safety official at, I think his barracks is called, that barracks area along Kershi Road. This man has never failed to be there in the morning, anytime I passed. And I said, Chukudi, I thought you were telling yourself you're hardworking and dedicated. Look at that man, he's better than you. I was so happy with that. I was able to say, keep on being a dedicated man. He was looking at the cars I was living. I said, hey, he doesn't understand. It is good to meet Nigerians who do their job.
Yeah.
I come here and drop the name of the NDLEA hemsman, Buba Marwa. He hasn't bribed me. I believe in him. I come in here, I drop the name of Zulum, Babagana Zulum of Borno State. I don't know him.
And you need to start dropping my name too.
You are dropping your name more than I can drop it anyway, because you're visible. So let us keep on extolling the virtues of Nigerians who are making this country proud. There's no place as good as this country.
True.
It depends
Very
on how you look at it. Sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's okay that we are discussing this issue of out-of-school children, because just like the newspaper said, that is a time bomb. So, I mean...
And yesterday we saw 168 schools shut in Zamfara.
So, I mean, so you can imagine it's
out-of-school
really,
children.
Yeah.
And then you have schools shut.
Especially in the north.
Yes, you want to look at the consequences of people being out of school. First of all, they are not going to be informed or educated properly. Security is going to suffer, because in the absence of something worthwhile, you can easily get them to get into vice for peanuts. Then they are not going to be able to make decisions that will affect or bring about a quality life for themselves, because you have not trained them up in thinking critically. When you do not affect critical mass, you're not helping people. Somebody said, it was Okoje during his time, you don't train people in the university for an employment somewhere. You take them to the level where critical mass is affected. They can think for themselves. And whatever they apply themselves to, they do it glibly, flawlessly, seamlessly.
And it reflects in national development at the end of the day.
Sure, Nigeria gains at the end of the day. You said it. That's it.
That is what we don't have in this country, unlike other climes. Anyway, let's move on. Kano Goba Tussle Supreme Court fixes hearing for Thursday. Sponsored Nigerian students in foreign institutions absconding. Absconding.
I raised that question here some time ago. I did, and I remember that day it was clear.
They abscond.
I mentioned the fact that state governments are beginning to sponsor people out of their states, somewhere else out of this country for education purpose. Number one, is that the right step in the right direction? How does this solve, number one, the Japa syndrome, we're dealing with in this country? And then now that they're absconding, it means they're not coming back, or they're not going to,
in the literary world, that's called escapism. You have an escapist attitude to your problems. You're postponing the evil day. That is not the solution. Shipping out Nigerians to go outside when there is more than enough for them to do, if circumstance is arranged to become more humane, for them, it's not the best for us to do.
No, but you can actually sponsor students to go abroad for particular, training that you cannot, actually obtain here in Nigeria. It's
what stops us from developing?
No. Sometimes
let's call that long-term thinking.
Yes, you can actually. But the mentality of most of the students that go abroad is for them to get there and probably japa. You understand? And they don't have the mind of coming back to come and serve the country. So we now begin to, there is need for us to now begin to change. No. There is need for orientation, reorientation, the mindset.
Because they send money back.
It's the mindset that we need
to change. If the country gains because they send money back to us, that will be accidental benefit. They leave not because they are thinking of benefits to the green, white, green Nigeria. It is to feather their nest and all that. And that is not good for us as a country. It is not good for us.
Anyway,
we must make the country one that people want to inhabit in and help develop. That's the best attitude.
Very true. I just hope that some of these policies are checked really, just so we can better our country. Yes. Very important. All right, we'll leave the conversation as regards newspapers at this point today, because we have some guests, and I'm very eager to talk about the topic today. Chukwudi, always a pleasure to have you. Hope you'll be here tomorrow. Christmas is around the corner.
I'll always try, but I know I won't be as dedicated as that FRSC man. He's something else.
By the way, I said Christmas is around the corner, so make sure you come with goodies before Friday. Monday is Christmas.
She's looking for brown envelope. You're not getting it.
Like you gave the FRSC official. I deserve one too. All right, so we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll get into the conversation. Please stay with us.
You're welcome back. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. Before we kickstart our conversation on encouraging local content development in Nigeria's steel sector, let's take this background report by Abdusalam Jibril.
In 1979, the largest steel mill in Nigeria, the Ajaokuta Steel Company, was incorporated under President Shehu Shagari. By the time of his removal from office in 1983, the project was 84% completed, and by 1994, it reached 98% completion, with 40 of the 43 plants at the facility having been built. It was meant to be the epitome of the country's steel industry, a strategic sector for technological and economic development and viable export pool to other African nations. However, over 4 decades later, experts insist the project was mismanaged and remains incomplete. This could easily depict the Nigerian steel sector. One aspect some analysts note has the potential to create jobs, reduce capital flight, drive industrialization, contribute to gross domestic product GDP, and is a matter of national pride. They maintain that the steel industry faces several challenges that have hindered its growth and development, which includes inadequate infrastructure, dependence on imports, inadequate funding, poor management, corruption, and sabotage, among others. Over the years, several administrations have tried to revive the Ajaokuta Steel Company and indeed the sector towards boosting the country's steel industry, but to no avail. In July 2020, the federal government said it would be sourcing up to 60% local content to revive the Ajaokuta Steel Company. The government stressed it was keen on local content promotion and wealth creation and would only source for foreign content when they are not locally available. With the assumption of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the renewed hope agenda, the administration is seeking to positively support the growth and development of the steel sector. The government emphasizes that this can be achieved by utilizing local content, which will in turn create jobs through youth empowerment, reduce insecurity, contribute to the GDP, and promote industrialization. Can the Nigerian steel sector be revived and a source of national pride? Should incentives be given to other steel manufacturers towards boosting the sector? How much will local content add towards transforming Nigeria's steel sector into becoming a beacon of the steel industry in Africa and beyond? This will form the crux of discussions as guests speak to the development of the steel sector in Nigeria shortly.
Thank you, Abdusalam Jibril, for the background report, and already seated to discuss the local content development in Nigeria's steel sector is the Honorable Minister of State for Steel Development, His Excellency Uba Megari Amadu. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right. We also have with us the Executive Secretary and CEO, Nigerian Investment Promotion Council. Welcome, Aisha Remy.
Thank you. Good morning.
Also with us in the studio, we have Mukesh Sharma. He's from the Vulcan Steel Jindal Steel Company. Mukesh, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
All right. We also have Farouk Aliyu, Chairman, Niger Extraction Steel Company. Nice to have you join us on this program.
A pleasure to be here.
And our regular guest, Dr. Emeka Okengo, former consultant to Ministry of Mines and Steel Development on review of Ajaokuta and NIMCO technical audit. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's kickstart our conversation this morning with the Minister. Honorable Minister, the data available to us says that Nigeria spends $3.3 billion importing steel every year. Nigeria being the biggest economy, in Africa, and has 30 steel manufacturers, but can only produce 2.2 million tons, yearly. So, what is your evaluation of the current state of the steel sector in the country?
Well, thank you, Ademola. There is a lot that needs to be put in place. Quite truly, there are challenges But like all challenges, there are surmountable challenges. Yes, there are issues here and there that have been responsible for the setbacks the industry has suffered over the years. But you will agree with me that with this government, our government, the Renewed Hope agenda, is seriously pushing a change in the narrative of the situation. How are we doing this? First and foremost, you know quite well that the onset of this administration, Mr. President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu created the Ministry of Steel Development separate from where it was before, together with the Ministry of Solar Minerals. That emphasizes the importance the government attaches to the steel sector on the one hand. Then secondly, it has consistently said through the agencies, through the mouthpiece of the government and through those in charge, that this government is serious about industrialization. That is why we have a whole new, brand new Ministry of Steel Development in charge of policy formulation and giving it a clear direction. And in the ministry, we are right now looking into developing a roadmap for the industry, the steel sector. We all know that nothing happens in any country, industrially speaking, unless you have a steel sector that is well on track. Founding fathers did well by setting up Ajaokuta over 40 years ago, but unfortunately, we've had problems along the line, policy inconsistency, I would say, and death of private investment into the sector. If you ask me, I would say that government is not the best model to push investments like this. Like it is often said, government has no business being in business. We are refocusing in the sense that we are looking at serious investors with proven track record in the sector. We are looking at the whole issue. By the time we are done and our roadmap is clearly rolled out, Nigerians will begin to see the new direction this government is paying to the steel sector.
All right, Honorable Amadu, I'm glad that you mentioned the Ajaokuta steel in your opening comments as regards reviving the steel sector in the country.
Yeah.
A lot of people have likened the Ajaokuta steel complex to the very popular Abiku poem by J.P. Clark. And yes, even the former minister did.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And, you know, looking at the history, you just mentioned over 4 decades, and still Ajaokuta is not breathing. Why do you think that, you know, you just mentioned that government has no business doing business. In the past, other governments have tried to concession the complex to different companies, but that still did not help the complex to see the light of the day. Why do you think there will be life now in Ajaokuta with what you're saying?
Well, I'm happy you said governments have tried in the past. Governments have come and gone. This government is different from previous governments, and I will tell you how. This is a government with a clear vision, a clear direction of where it's headed to. And Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has a largely private sector background. It's different from people who got to the seat without getting prepared, fully prepared for the job. These are issues that are right at his fingertips. And I will tell you that the president has a clear vision on how to transform this country. Ajaokuta was conceived by a government over 40 years ago. Now we have a new government in place with a clear direction. Yes, there have been problems. What we have on ground now is a team of technocrats, diverse field, specialists in different areas. We are taking on Ajaokuta segment by segment. There are issues that have been there for some time. There are issues connected to availability of raw materials, development of connecting infrastructure. We need the rail to work from Ajaokuta to move from Itakwe to move raw materials to the steel complex, and we need another workable plan that will have a rail line transport the finished products from the plant to the ports. And of course, the power component is there. When you factor all this together, you know that this is very serious business. How do I mean? You need a private sector driven approach to solving things. There is no prize for guessing that previous governments that is, have failed in putting this on the table. We are now solving the issues, putting it back block by block. We will need to revive Niomco, which is like having a bakery and a supplier, the flour supplier. If you have a bakery and you don't have constant supply of flour, you will just have a bakery without bread. We are looking at it from this point of view, trying to put all the components in place. Like I said, we have the depth of infrastructure around the place. And it may interest you to know that before Ajaokuta gets off the ground, that is working optimally, you will need to stockpile raw materials that will fill the mill. All these are areas that this government is looking into strategically, such that by the time it takes off finally, and no stopping again.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for reeling out some of the plans that the federal government has to revive Ajaokuta and to bring it back to life. But one major thing that you talked about is the private sector-driven approach, which the government intends to actually pursue in this administration. And that would take the question to Aisha now. I want you to tell us what is your what are you doing? That is the Executive Secretary, your Nigerian Investment. What actually is the role of Nigerian Investment Promotion Council in this regard to help attract investors and also to encourage local steel producers?
Thank you very much again for having me or us here this morning. So let me start by putting some context to this. First, it's the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission.
Okay.
And this is a commission that was set up in 1999. It's been in existence since that time, and it was set up primarily to be the gateway commission that bridges the gap between the private sector and government. The role of the NIPC is to facilitate, to promote, to assist investors, domestic and foreign, operating in Nigeria. So for those who are already in Nigeria, it's to help with the retention, to make sure that they have access to the government agencies that they need to. Where they have challenges, we step in. And for those who are seeking to enter Nigeria, we offer assistance. So it could be anything from due diligence to advisory to seeking joint venture partners. Again, we actually have something that is called the One-Stop Investment Center, where there are about 27 different government agencies. So you can do everything from register your business to obtaining your permits, expatriate quotas, and even filing your returns in this One-Stop Investment Center. So when you ask specifically, what do we do to assist investors? One of the things the Honourable Minister has talked about is the renewed hope. And we all acknowledge that there have been issues in the past. So what are we doing? We're collaborating. After all, government agencies, everybody, we're all mission aligned. We all have a destination that we're trying to get to. We haven't always gotten it right, but we see, and the thing also about mistakes is that you learn from them. Mistakes in themselves are not bad, but you have to learn from them. And he's talked about President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed hope and also his experience. So he's come with a clear vision and a roadmap. This roadmap requires government agencies to collaborate. And in this collaboration, we at NIPC have a collaboration with the ministry.
Okay.
We're not going to be able to, like I said, to change it overnight, but we're going to cherry pick. We're working with the Vulcan Group now. We're going to have specific projects that we work on, and we're going to show that it is possible with collaboration and also policy advocacy.
All right, many thanks, Aisha Rimi, Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. Brilliant. And of course, we would like to get to Mukesh Sharma now from Vulcan Jindal Steel Company. From our earlier interaction, I got to know that you're Indian and you've been in Nigeria since 2005. Yes. That's a very long time. And being in the steel sector, being an industry player, you understand what's happening in Nigeria. You just heard the minister, and I'm sure you've worked with previous ministers or you have interfaced with previous governments before now. As an industry player and someone not in government, and you understand what this industry entails, could you please tell us in your own assessment, what really are the challenges of Nigeria's steel sector?
Well, one thing is that Nigeria is right now focused on the steel sector, which is predominantly producing long products, mainly catering to the local market, which is rebars basically. And you are producing roofing sheets, which is based on imported raw material. But nobody is focusing on producing top quality steel, which could be for global market. So the local industries are just catering, and they are working on cost plus profit margin, which does not ensure a very efficient production model. When you're competing globally in terms of quality and cost, that's where the efficiency comes. And that's where my group is coming here to see we are into HR coil, which is flat products, and nobody in West Africa rather makes it. So my group is trying to come here and produce HR coil and hot plates, which has had wider application for the industry in Nigeria, entire West Africa. We plan to produce around 5 million ton of hot rolled coil and hot plates, and we intend to do it on a port-based location, because then we can cater not only to the local market but to the whole global market. And we want to focus on the energy source available here. The gas and oil is available here, which can make us one of the most competitive in the global market for our products. And we could even cater to the whole of European market from this place. So we are focused on local content. Almost everything is available here for our product. And we will focus on producing one of the largest and most efficient plant in this country.
From what you said, importation and not looking inwards in the country is the main reason why the steel sector is still probably sleeping in the country. Do you think that government in the previous governments have shown commitment to the industry, or you think that maybe the government is not doing the right things?
Government has tried their best. Their government have done, but maybe that was not enough. Selection of the site sometimes becomes so important that you struggle. That's why sometimes everything is good, but then that location has certain inherent demerits, and you have no solution. So that's why when we are coming here, we are very particular about location of our plant, because you have to be prepared for all eventualities. I mean, steel sector is such that which undergoes a lot of changes in a cyclical manner. Tomorrow, your cost of production or the market or the prices or the raw material sourcing, there can be a lot of changes. So you have to be located at a place where you can adjust according to the situation of the global market.
Okay.
That's what our focus is.
Okay, thank you very much there. And let's go to Farouk Aliyu now. Yeah, the chairman, Niger Extraction Steel Company. You've listened to the conversation so far. And one of the challenges that he mentioned is the environment. And it's a major challenge, actually, when we talk about the environment, talk about the power sector, talk about manpower and every other issues. In what ways then can this poor environment and the many sides to the issues as regards steel production be improved? How can we improve on it?
Well, I think that's the million-dollar question, right? It's important to look at everything in chunks. Yes, there are Nigerian issues that bedevil every organization. So those challenges aren't peculiar to steel or the steel industry, right? So in terms of things that we can do, I think we need to look at upskilling. I think from a labor standpoint, a lot of emphasis has been given to degrees, and those things are great, but these types of kind of trade skills are also vitally important, and that's what you need in things like steel manufacturing, whatever it is. So I think greater emphasis needs to be placed on that. But also, I think we need to look outside the box to come up with creative solutions. No country industrializes without self-sufficiency or close to self-sufficiency in cement and steel. It doesn't happen, right? So we're there with cement. So the journey has started. Now we need to get there with steel. And I'm very happy that the NIPC and the honorable minister is here, because this is something that they're taking quite seriously. Okay. And I think that speaks to their presence being here. I think everyone realizes this is something that is crucial for Nigeria to develop. So we have a chicken and egg situation where we're not doing things in the process of you do the first step, you do the second. Because of what has happened in Nigeria, we're almost running parallel processes to get everything running at once. So there are going to be mistakes, but the important thing is, do you learn from them? Do you take it on board, and then do you make corrections? So to sum it up, I think labor, we need to look at having a pipeline of good hands. And I think from the business standpoint, I think the ministry and the NIPC have taken that on board, and they're creating an enabling environment to have people like me sitting here, to have a foreign investor sitting here, to make it as seamless as possible for us to be able to get deals done and to get projects started.
Okay. All right, thank you, Farouk Aliyu. I'll get to Dr. Okengwu now. Okengwu. Yes, I need to get it right. He's wearing a red cap. I must be careful. All right. Yes, he's a high chief. Dr. Emeka Okengwu, you have listened to the conversation. Beyond listening to the conversation, you are an expert in this sector. You've been a consultant with the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, for a long time, and then you understand, the issues. But for an average Nigerian, the worry is that the country is blessed with raw materials. Iron ore, coal, natural gas, limestone, what is needed, for the manufacturing of steel. But yet we're still where we are. Doctor, please, could you tell us exactly?
Thank you very much.
What do you expect the government to do differently this time, considering the fact that previous administrations have tried, like you've heard, to resuscitate this industry?
Well, let me start by saying the things that government is doing right. And I think the first right thing they have done is to get the right pegs and right holes. I've interacted with the Honorable Minister. Maybe this is not right for me to say this on national television. His depth of understanding is deep. I was privileged to have been in a meeting where he sat with the Executive Secretary of NIPC, talking about the issues we're basically discussing here, and that gladdened me a lot. In fact, I said to them, it was one of the best retirement gifts they could give to me at 60. Because in that room, it was the NIPC, was the Honorable Minister, were the investors who had come together, to just talk about how we can move this sector forward. Again, talking about the NIPC Executive Secretary, she's a lawyer, comes very announced, very, very well-heeled in the private sector and development of businesses. That part of it Maybe a lot of people don't know. For those who know her, she's been there for quite some while. Now, let me get to your question. I'd like to deepen it by first and foremost looking at the historical, drive that we've come through with the steel industry. Our steel industry actually, took root in 1967, and the spirit and letters behind it was our government had said we need steel to be able to grow the production, local manufacturing of goods, and then reduce our import dependence on forex. And what a lot of people also do not know, that when you're discussing Ajokuta is not a steel factory, it is a basic industries facilities. Farouk had mentioned that the two things a country needs is cement and steel. In Ajokuta, as we speak today, Ajokuta has facilities equivalent to 4 cement factories put together that can start producing cement yesterday. For steel, for people who are into development, the mantra is that development is steel and steel is development. There is no country in the world that can never be classified as developed when they are not independent or when they are dependent on their steel utilization or procurement. You asked me about raw materials, and I think this is where the politics of steel development, that I believe with the presence of both the NIPC Executive Secretary and the Ministry and the Minister of Steel, has been broken. There's a lot of politics, international politics of economic relations. It's called PIA. And if you don't understand it, it has a lot to do with the supply chain. And when you're talking about goods and services, remember that at one time, one of the reasons why Ajokuta stalled was the importation of billets. Because somebody has said that Nigeria didn't have the kind of coal to be able to produce, coal briquettes. But recent studies have shown that in a location in Lafi Obi in Nasarawa, you have more than enough. In fact, they had done a lot of drilling on that site and found out that the calorific values of the coal there were over 7,000. The ones they saw around the Middle Belt was about 6,000. Enugu had about 5,500. And for coal to qualify to, have that calorific value that can turn it into coking coal, you just need 5,000. So what it means is that we've always had these raw materials. When you talk about manganese and ferromanganese, it's all over the place. And I get personal again. One of the things that the Honorable Minister did was to visit the National Steel Raw Materials Exploration Agency in Kaduna. I followed that story to find out what that trip was all about. And what are these people, what are their primary functions? It is to drill, explore for steel raw making materials. And thereafter, I saw him next in Onitsha, where he went to visit the Metallurgical Training Institute. So, to answer your question directly, what has held us not to be able to move our steel sector forward is all in this room. Policy supports, investment and funding. And you all have them in this room now, speaking with one voice. So I think for me to join the call in saying that probably the steel sector might become that pathway to be able to showcase clearly that the Renewable Hope agenda is not a political mantra, but something that can be achieved.
Thank you, Dr. Emeka, for that, your view there. You just highlighted some of the challenges that we're facing, the policy formulation, support, investment, and funding. And I want the minister to actually speak on those issues, the policy, because one of the major challenges that we have is inconsistent policy over the years. And you mentioned that this time around we'll have, it won't be business as usual. Yeah. So can you just comment on this policy issue?
Taking off from where my friend Dr. Emeka stopped.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, this government is doing so many things differently. We took a trip around steel installations. It might interest you to know that right here in this hall, we, together with my sister, the Executive Secretary of the NIPC, I forgot to congratulate her for the wonderful job she is doing at the NIPC. Right in this room, we have investment in the neighborhood of 900 USD, and they are seated here. Volcan Jindal is moving in very shortly. If we finish what we're doing with an investment of about 600 USD. Niger 600 million USD. Niger Extraction has almost rounded up its part, and it's coming in with its Turkish partners with investment in the neighborhood of 300 million USD. And this is happening now. Why is it happening now? They have confidence in the government. They have confidence in those in charge. You can't bring in your money where you are not guaranteed of its workability. We are putting it all together right before us, before our eyes. A lot is unfolding. The Metallurgical Training Institute in Onitsha is one institute that most people don't know. When the Ajaokuta Steel Rolling Complex was being put together, those in charge then thought rightly to develop an institute, a specialist kind of institute that will train the manpower to take care of the mills. Not only Ajaokuta, for your information, all other steel-related sectors. One thing that gladdens my heart is that under our watch, we took a facility tour of this institute. And so right before our eyes, students in session being taught metal fabrication, foundry, electrical engineering as it affects the steel industry, and so many things. Why am I excited? We are talking about youth unemployment, poverty eradication, not alleviation, under the NIDOB agenda. Right in Onitsha.
Can poverty actually be eradicated?
Why not? Right
That's
in
Onitsha,
anyway. We have an institute that has the capacity to train 500,000 youth and take them completely off the streets. Not in one fell swoop, of course. They have a 3-year curriculum and it's backed by, supported by NAPTEP. So instead of just throwing cash at people, we have somewhere to train our youth, and with the right qualification. Somewhere along the line, I got educated some more by my friend that if they get Cisco certification, they can even go abroad, earn dollars, repatriate some back home, somehow reducing the pressure on Forex in Nigeria. In the sense that we look for Forex to do virtually everything now. But when we export to young men who have the capacity to work abroad and earn money, we are reversing the process. That is one angle. There is the Steel Raw Material Exploration Agency in Kaduna, which has been upscaled. We are doing so much. We are looking for funding. We are looking for funding both from within, and we are partnering with the private sector to get funding. It may interest you to know that as we speak, we are networking with the Nigeria Governors Forum to sit with them and bring these two entities together such that it will be showcased to the at the subnational level, so that they know that we can drive so much. We are looking at moving away from fossil fuel in the next few decades. And I think that we should be concentrating on developing our natural resources. No state in Nigeria is without God's blessing as it concerns these reserves. We can do lots if we put the right people in the right places and get the machinery that can do the work. Like now, we don't do things manually again. If we get the best equipment the world has to do the best things we have, to do the things we have lined up, we can turn around a lot of things in this country.
Yeah, but the issue of funding, sir, how do you intend to actually address that? Because it's a major concern.
I told you earlier on that our mindset, I mean the government generally, is to drive things through the private sector.
Okay.
We are not speaking for myself now, because some policies need to be, a decision has to be taken at the highest level. But for me, I would prefer that we push the private sector business model. How do I mean? We take a test case without fixing it on Ajaokuta alone. There are thriving steel companies in Nigeria. We have the African Steel. We have so many of them working. Why are they working? We try to find out what makes the difference between those privately run companies and those that are owned by government. Okay. I forgot to also mention to you that in our many ways of solving these problems, we got involved with the NIPC, Delta, Edo State government is currently involved in some talks. We've not finalized, so I'll keep it at that. But that is just one example of how we are thinking of going around these issues, not directly through government funding.
Okay. All right, not directly through government funding, Honorable Amadou. I'm going to take you up on that because since this Ajaokuta Steel Company has been moribund, if you like, in a comatose state, workers have been paid monthly, you know, for doing nothing. And from statistics, so if I want to check the figures, over 3.4 billion is spent monthly to take care of the workers of the Ajaokuta, company alone, aside other, agencies of government you said that are not functioning optimally. And then looking at another figure, which talked about how Ajaokuta can be revived. We're just talking about Ajaokuta now. Over the years, by the way, government has spent over $10 billion in trying to, get that complex to work. And then the figures show that we need about 1.6 billion. In fact, that's at 2020 when, there was an audit on how the company can begin to work. About 1.6 billion will be needed. So I just want to know from you, do you really think, and then looking at how long that company has been idle, over 40 years, do you think the facilities or the equipment there will still function, number one? Then number two, how do you intend to go about getting this amount of investment just to resuscitate Ajaokuta Steel Company?
Well, let me start from the last. I'm not an expert in figures, but I will tell you that the experts naturally will have to undertake an equipment audit, technical audit they call it. And that figure is even contested, even from the industry experts. Some will tell you that it is over-bloated. I don't have the capacity sitting here to say either it's bogus or it's real. But I can tell you from what I know in the 4 months I've been there that the amount is contested. That aside, you asked whether it was okay to keep paying workers. Did you?
Yes, I did.
What would you prefer? To let them off, go on the streets and go hungry? I'm not saying that it's okay altogether, but that even justifies the position the government is taking to move away from direct government ownership of businesses. I'm sure if it was privately run by either Niger Extractors or Jindal Steel, I'm sure they wouldn't be paying monies like that for just people sitting. But that is not to say that it's not altogether true that they are just idling. No, they're not. There is this misconception of Ajaokuta as just one plant or one factory. No, it's not. It's comprised of 43 different units, and some of these units have the capacity to independently produce. You heard the expert there say that we can do lots. It's like 2 cement factories in one place. They have a workshop, they have a power plant, they have a foundry, they have furnace, they have so many components like that. If you go there, I'm sure you will find some of these components doing something, although not productively like we would want them to do, but they are not altogether idling. And just to round it up, that part of people being paid not doing anything, we as a government, there is this social component, social service component of government. Sometimes it's not always that you do things for profit. Sometimes you do things for humanity, so to speak. I wouldn't advise government to just keep a business as big as that and be paying salaries for people doing it. But I told you that they are actually not just idling, but we can do better. And that is why this government is paying a lot of attention to not only Ajaokuta, but similar factories that government has interest in, with a view to moving them away from co-government ownership, whole government ownership, to models that we're still working on.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
Thank you.
And let's move on to the Secretary NIPC now, Aisha. Earlier on, you talked about collaborating with other government agencies, to bring the development back to this sector. How do you intend to go about that?
Okay, thank you for that question. So, before I go into that, I'm going to just touch on something that the Honourable Minister has raised, and some of the other issues that have been raised here. You see, when you talk about paying workers they're not idle. These are workers who have been trained. They've been trained. They have skills that are not necessarily that cannot be just found on the streets today. We saw during COVID in some of the more developed countries, furlough schemes were developed, whereby workers who were unable to go back to work were kept, because you realize that the cost of retraining people or re-employing people when the industries are back up would have been huge. So, and like the Honourable Minister said, you don't always do things for profit. Sometimes these are welfare schemes that operate. But more importantly, these are workers who have been trained to operate those machines. Then you also have the resultant effect on the communities. And how devastating that would be if you laid off. And I don't know what the numbers are, the employees that are in that sector. So, but to go more directly to your question, how do we intend to do that? At the NIPC, we have a policy and advocacy department. We also have research and development. So in looking at best practices around the world, how things have been done, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're trying to pick and find out how these things have been done so that we can replicate where it is possible. Okay. Of course, these things have to be contextualized. They have to be domesticated. We have to work with the peculiarities of our country. Okay. But at the end of the day, healthy competition amongst agencies and MDAs, and also proactive collaboration. Okay. So the Honourable Minister, like the brother that he is, reached out. We saw an opportunity. Again, we talked about, the Honourable Minister has talked about government has no business being in business. Okay. Public-private partnerships, concession agreements. There are many ways in which one can be creative.
Your commission is also in partnership with the ministry right now, right? I mean, what should Nigeria expect from your collaboration with the ministry, your partnership with the ministry? We have one project at the moment with the Vulcan Group. Okay. We are looking at the best location where the requirements that would make this work. Because if you remember earlier on, we talked about how sometimes projects were situated in areas that not necessarily practical. Okay. But if everything else had come together, it shouldn't have been a problem. So now we realize that you don't, if you need to do this, you've got to have certain facilities in place. Power, ports, land, and of course the staff, or the skilled staff. So proximity to all of these things, rail transportation, are very important. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Aisha. Dr. Okengu, I'll quickly get to you now. You know, from what has been established so far, the industry, talking about the steel industry, serves as a stimulus to national development and economic boost to industrial growth of a country. And listening to the minister, he's talked about not just the Jakarta, but of course reviving the National Steel Raw Material Exploration Agency in Kaduna. Dr. Okengu, how strategic is that to revive the steel sector in this country?
Strategic is an understatement. Central is a better way to put it. The two most important, if you may, institutions that support or that could support steel development in Nigeria will be that institute in Kaduna or that agency in Kaduna that has, by the act of the National Assembly, the right, exclusive right really, to explore for steel making raw materials. And out of the 7 national minerals, listed as required for national development, the steel requirements come to about 3 or 4 of them: iron ore, coal, limestone, lead, zinc, silica. Now, for human capital, if Vulcan Steel is going to come into Nigeria, if we're not very careful, they're going to be bringing in people from India if we don't have that human capital here. And there is nothing you can do to stop it because it's an international requirement. And which is why one of the things that the Honorable Minister is pushing for is not for us to have the MBT, yes, good certification, but the international certification that we must also get. One will be the ISO 3834 for welding. 2 will be the Cisco that the Honorable Minister mentioned. 3 will be the JOC. And then you go to the MTI, which again is very, very central. But there's something it is important I say here so that everybody gets it very clearly. When we are talking about steel and steel development, we must talk about the raw materials required to be able to, produce them on a commercial or sustainable basis, which again I think the Honorable Minister had touched on. And if we are going to be doing that, we will need to realign the relationship between the Ministry of Solid Minerals Development and the new Ministry of Steel Development. Because right now there seems to be some kind of disequilibrium as it were. But I think it's all part of what the NIPC can also get to do. So to answer your question directly, the steel sector getting MTI, like Honorable Minister has said, can actually train a minimum of 3 million people. Minimum. And just not train them with international certifications. That's how easy it is. Because Ajaokuta as it is, was actually built from Ajaokuta. This is one thing a lot of Nigerians also do not know. The Russians didn't import any of the machines that they used in setting up Ajaokuta. They built Ajaokuta from what they call the base plant or the engineering plant. Now, against that base plant and engineering plant, they have a facility that can retrofit every and any kind of transformer, 100% completed. So when you talk about staff being idle there, that is farthest from the truth. But what you're not seeing is that a lot of them are no longer, producing, but maintaining those machines. If you get in there, a lot of those machines are in ship shape. Okay. And when people keep talking about Ajaokuta not being functional, like the Honorable Minister said, only one small unit called the blast furnace of Ajaokuta is what is holding, Ajaokuta from producing billets. Ajaokuta can produce gas cylinders. Ajaokuta can produce knives. Ajaokuta can produce agricultural equipment. Ajaokuta can produce cement. Okay, from the and like I said again, retrofit, those transformers. So to answer your question simply and directly, exploration mineral is very important for job creation, which is human capital. And again, funding, like I don't know if it's time for me to get into that now, but let me let the people, the policy people deal with it. That wasn't part of your question, was it?
No,
okay.
No.
Well, you could just go ahead and touch on it.
Well, you see, the Honorable Minister has talked about private sector funding, but private sector funding is a magnet. There has to be assurances and guarantees. I've always promoted that Ajaokuta is not directly funded by government. But like the Honorable Minister says, the only business that government has in business is to be able to support business. And they have done so by establishing intervention programs. I have always proposed, I've always pushed that for Ajaokuta to move forward, government has to find a way of establishing that intervention fund. Maybe $1 billion, okay, on promissory notes that can be done using MOFI, and then allow the Honorable Minister, and his team, the NIPC, to be able to aggregate that funding into what can now become a new sector for us. If we go the way of budgetary provisions, trust me, it might take a much more longer time, as Ajaokuta is most critical now to our survival as a nation.
Thank you very much. Ajaokuta is very critical to our survival as a nation. Thank you, Dr. Emeka, for that, your thoughts there. Now let me come back to our investors here, Mukesh. You have listened to and you've heard the huge, opportunities that, abound here, in the steel industry. How do you intend to tap into it, to take advantage of all this?
See, we look Nigeria as a huge potential, not only in terms of market, but also in terms of making a top quality steel, world-class steel, and cater to the world market. That's why the issue of the financing the project and all that comes. But when there is a private sector coming in, the private sector gets funding on the basis of its own strength and track records. When we approach international organizations, wherever they may be, they are not only looking at Nigeria as a country where we are going to make steel, but they are looking at us as Jindal Group, and what kind of a 60, 70-year-old track record we have in steel and power and mining. Okay. So, and then they look at our business model where we are saying, okay, we'll make 5 million ton steel and we will export 3 million ton to global market. And that export will generate forex. And that model itself, is ready to serve the capital, the funding we raise. Because when we raise in dollar terms, my cost of funding will be low, and I will be able to serve it by exporting the products. That is the really vibrant, good model for Nigeria. If you want to be efficient, you should be able to raise funding at low cost and serve it well, not by depending on government, but by generating resources on your own. And that's the model we are focusing on.
All right, okay. Mukesh, I'll just stay with you because of what you have said. Because you're generating funds on your own, and then you said Nigeria has huge potential. For many Nigerians watching now, they'll be worried about, this plan, for government to hand over, some of the sectors, or if you like, Ajaokuta specifically now, to the private sector. And that's basically because of, our experiences in the past. When private investors come into this country, they take advantage of, the country and its resources. Let's use Ajaokuta as an example. Other concessions that have happened in the past. We saw an Indian firm come in, yes, and then there were reports of Ajaokuta being cannibalized and all that stories. So I want you to tell us really, as a private investor, what would you want government to do just so that you do not take advantage of, the huge potential and then just go back to your country without, benefit, without huge impact on the people of the country. So is that something you think government is not doing, or is it the people as a private investor really?
No, really, when I have met the MOS and NIPC CEO, actually, I've been very excited because they have really moved very fast and very quickly, and they have understood what we are exactly looking for. And regarding your issue of, what we will do, we will not be behaving the way the investors in the past have. Frankly speaking, we are not looking for anything from the government. What we are looking for is a place where we can set up a greenfield steel project. We are looking for a commitment of gas at a effective, good economic price. Rest we are going to do. We are going to set up our power plant. We are going to set up our port. We are going to develop infrastructure. So frankly speaking, we are bringing investment. We are going to set up, we are going to create assets for the country. We are not taking anything from the government.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll take a break now. When we come back, the conversation continues. Stay with us.
Back. This is Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA, and we're still talking about the steel sector, and our guests are still very much with us. All right, so we continue the conversation now, and Farouk Aliyu, the chairman of Niger Extraction Steel Company, would respond to my question, and this is because some experts are actually advocating the engagement of primary liquid steel. You're in the sector, you understand what that is about. Primary liquid steel production using primary raw materials like iron ore and related minerals to boost production. What really do you think are the gaps that needs to be closed in order for us to achieve this optimally?
Thank you, that's a good question. So in terms of what method of production you use, it needs to, do you have the raw material? So if I am located in, let's say, Abuja, and I want to use that method of production, but there are no iron ore deposits there, then obviously that's not feasible, right? So I think you've heard Mukesh talk about site selection. So site selection is crucial. I think for all sorts of projects in Nigeria, we tend to look at it from the perspective of, okay, I have this big land here, and I want to do X. So whether it's practical or not, because I have the land, I want to situate my site there. If you're not doing a primarily recycling plant where you take scrap, to melt it, then that doesn't make sense, right? So I think it's just a function of people being better informed and actually picking the right sites.
But talking about scrap, some people have also said, the use of scrap for the manufacture of steel products leads to low quality. How true is that?
So you can upgrade the quality of steel that you produce, right? And then oftentimes what you find is you can do a combination of scrap, iron ore material to upgrade the finished product. It is very important as we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about the future. You cannot discount recycling what's already there, right? That is a huge market that should not be ignored. And it is very, very important that whoever is doing it, this isn't something that degrades. So it's not as if, like you throw a banana peel on the ground, it turns into manure or whatever. You put steel in the ground, that's not good for you. That's not good for, our future generations to come. So recycling is a very crucial component of if you want to look at it as the steel life cycle, right? And we're extremely bullish about Nigeria, and we're extremely bullish about the future. And this is the only country that we have, right? There's nowhere else for me. So we need to look at it as, there are things that are hip, or this is what's in style now. So let's do this. But it's important to remember the basics, and it's important to remember why certain people are doing certain things. I think recycling is very important. I think mining in a responsible way is also crucial. The goal is to be able to get export quality product, right? And if you can do that in a responsible and sustainable way, which is what the goal is, that should be the goal for every investor, that's what we should do. So irrespective of whether you're using an electric arc furnace, you're using a blast furnace, whatever the method is, your inputs, can come from recycled products, can come from mined products, can come from imported billets. So you're probably going to have a mix of, depending on what sort of plant you have. You may have a mix of all three. It may just be one, So I think there are options.
Okay. Thank you very much, Farouk, for your thoughts there. Now, let me go back to the Honorable Minister. You talked about bringing in private investors into funding, the system. Now, what incentives is government providing for them to have a buy-in?
Mukesh is here. We've been on this for like 2 months now. Yes. Thereabouts. And I'll just use his example.
Okay.
His company's case as an example. Land, accessibility to land.
Okay.
They need quite a lot of hectares of land, which is available anyway, proximity to the ports, gas at concessionary rates, and of course, an enabling environment. Government provides this as incentives.
Okay.
I said earlier that we are interfacing with Edo State government. Edo State government with the NIPC also. Delta, sorry, not Edo State, Delta State.
Okay.
Which that mean Edo? I'm from Edo.
Oh, yes.
Okay. That settles it.
Delta State has an existing steel plant, which is not producing optimally.
Okay.
I'm sure for some of the reasons that we advise governments not to go into business. They are bringing on board some of the things on Mr. Mukesh's shopping list. These are some of the incentives government is providing to bring in investors and contribute to the development of this sector.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
As for funding,
yeah,
the best government can do is probably to stand in as for guarantees. We ensure that there's ease of doing business and so many other things. My sister here is largely responsible for like 90% of those issues. I was just trying to
okay. So let's get to Aisha now.
Yes.
You know, but I'm going to add, I'm sure you want to comment on that, but I'm going to add to that question, and I'm going to be looking in this direction. The Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, of course, you're looking forward to reviving different sectors, including the steel sector, getting investors to come in, and all of that. Brilliant, I must say. But you see, like I tried to ask Mukesh earlier, investors sometimes take advantage of this country. Probably, I do not know. Are you looking in the line of legislation? You know, I'm asking because, for example, the steel sector, countries like India and South Korea also, you know, started their steel, you know, construction around the same time we did, you know, with our Jakarta, and then they are up and running over the years, and then, you know, they've been able to employ so many people and generating so much. So are you looking at legislation just so that the investors do not come in here and then, you know, just take advantage of, you know, the huge potential, like they say, that we have?
Okay. Thank you. Again, a very good question, and I was going to address it even if you didn't ask me. There are many countries that started the same time as us, and we haven't caught up. So we're still, you know, in the race, so to speak. The issue of abuse or cannibalization, and I think that's the word that you used, it's not peculiar to just foreign investors. We've had issues with the privatization program where domestic investors took up opportunities, and they did not necessarily carry out the plans as they were supposed to, and we've had issues of cannibalization of many different sectors, When you talk about legislation, these laws exist. There are laws in place. The issue has always been implementation, and where you have, I don't want to say favoritism, but sometimes the laws are not equally and fairly applied, and that is one of the Mr. President's 8-point agenda, is rule of law. It is going to be a fair, equal, level playing field for all.
Okay.
And, you know, when we talk about regulators, so one of the things that also we do at NIPC, it's to make sure, like I said, everybody collaborates, everybody's speaking with one voice. We're all singing from the same hymn book. To get the regulators, to get the government agencies, everybody to work together, because policy inconsistencies, and that's where it all boils down to, it produces, for want of a better word, a dysfunctional environment. And that's what we've seen, and that's what we're trying to make sure that we realign, we refocus, we strategize, and of course we've got the leadership to support that. So I think moving forward, what you will see is there will be some cohesion. Of course, you can't do some of these things and attract some of these investments without the right incentives. And incentives are not, you know, people associate incentives with bad things. Incentives are not a bad thing. There's no country that has made progress or moved forward or industrialized whatever without cement, without steel, without power, without incentives. Again, it's about how it's applied and how it's monitored. We have incentives, like the Honourable Minister said, in terms of concessions on land, subsidized gas supplies for power generation. This group, God willing, when they get up and running, are going to build a power plant. They will build a power plant that will have excess power that can now be even supplied to the local communities. So you have, resultant effects, multiplier effects, community development, all those good things. And so we are, like I said, in the middle of this, with this gateway commission that is going to try and bring all these fluid moving parts together to create this whole that we know is very possible.
Okay, thank you very much, Aisha. Now let's talk about technology transfer now. Dr. Emeka, can we specifically talk on transfer? How are we? Are we limited in this regard?
Very greatly, again. So we are very limited because we've not been able to place our Ministry of Science and Technology at the center of our national development. I'd like to take a little story about India. Today we have Indian companies coming into Nigeria to play very big at our steel sector. This happened because the Indian government supported their citizens, their businesses with a lot of technologies and funding. If we were able to do so, Niger Extraction could have benefited from the incentives that the Executive Secretary of NIPC talks about. And those incentives could come in the way of technology support and technology transfers. And this is where, again, we're talking about building the proper human capital. It is one thing for you to identify or even procure these technologies, is another thing for you to manage it. India started a long time ago by just setting up what they call the India Exploration Company Limited for iron ore that was supposed to be private sector driven, but was largely supported by their government, very subterraneously. And in doing so, they were able to now, develop protocols that could, bring in investments into the Indian, iron ore sector by you being allocated acreages based on your capacities to be able to use it, and then the Indian government now supporting the investors. If Nigeria were to do that, Farouk could become as big as Vulcan is. Okay, very, very easily and very simply. But again, let me digress a little bit and talk about, siting. In the case of iron and steel, it doesn't necessarily play exactly that way, because you might never get to a point where you have all the raw materials around a site. What usually plays out is that you can actually use what you call the in-situ values of your mineral resources to build your transport infrastructure, based on what they call the base load, values. And base load values mean that for every 1 ton of iron ore, you can actually now juxtapose that against building your road infrastructure. So one way I think that Nigeria can fund and solve its infrastructure, transport infrastructure, is to be able to align our in-situ values to our infrastructure, which again now plays to your simple question, technology transfer. Ademola, nobody transfers technology to you. That is the truth. Nobody does that. What you do is that you force technologies to be given to you by the legislations you put into place. I can give you a typical example. Vulcan wants to build a steel plant. If government were to say to Vulcan, 60% or 30% or 20% of the computers you're going to be using in your plant would have to come from Nigeria. That's how they begin to come here to develop those capacities. Otherwise, we're going to be running the risk of the challenge we have with Mittal, where some people think it's unjustifiable for a company that came, paid $30 million, has an exposure to Nigerian banks over $300 million, and then they are being paid $400 and something million, to exit a company that is still dysfunctional, as it were. But even had our technologies, being forced somehow, not coerced now, some basic legislation that ties you, okay, to in transferring, in taking money, where you also bring in something. Vulcan wants to do a lot of exploration. They've listed that they're a mining company. You can transfer technology to National Steel Raw Materials if you insist, that they work with them. And then go there to feed them, and then make at least 30% of what they're going to be doing will be tied to the National Steel Raw Materials. So those are the different ways in your English you can transfer technology. But I rather will use the word acquire.
Okay.
Okay. In acquiring, then we can now begin to now make demands. Now, India is here not because they love Nigeria. India is here because they want to make, they know they can make a lot of money, tons and tons of money from Nigeria. And the moment they realize that we can also give the same opportunity to Farouk, I'm certain that they might be visiting both the minister and the NIPC more often. And this is how you can actually, do the technology.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Okengu. Because of time, we need to wrap up. But I just want to hear in a few seconds, just so that we can get to the Honorable Minister and wrap up this conversation. India is the world's second largest producer of crude steel, with an output of 125.32 million tons of crude steel. That's really huge and contributing so much to the GDP of India. What are the things we could learn from India? Just briefly. How did India get it right?
You have to address the concerns of the industry, and the government has to play the enabling role. And you see the private sector, because they are driven by profit and top line and bottom line, they will do their best to make sure.
Okay.
So play the enabling role. Leave it to them.
Okay, thank you very much, Mika. Now let's get to the minister now for his parting shots. Another major issue is the issue of corruption. How do you intend to tackle corruption in this in the industry?
Tackling corruption is one of 8 issues on the agenda, on the Renewed Hope agenda.
Yes.
There is a new sheriff in town. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, our president, by the grace of God, has nothing left to prove. He has done it, seen it, done virtually everything. He took on this opportunity for Nigeria, for service. He is tackling corruption with himself as an example. I'm sure if it was the other way around, you would have heard stories now. He is leading from the front.
Okay.
He is making sure that everybody is accountable for every responsibility he is given. He monitors, he checks. I don't want to go into specifics, but there is a whole lot going on that most people don't see outside. Perhaps after a year, the fruits will start to manifest. But I can give you my words for a guarantee that it's not business as usual. So many things are being done differently.
Of course, we want to see the difference. And
Yes.
Aisha, really,
Yes.
of course, I'll give you an opportunity to speak because you're the only woman, in this park. I just want you to tell us, what should Nigerians really expect, from the NIPC, away from the steel sector? What really are your plans, for the country, and how can we get it right in all of the sectors that you intend to get investors in?
Okay, thank you. The NIPC has a very crucial role. Like I said, we straddle both private and public sector. We are very functional, proactive, operational, and ready to assist any serious, credible, and responsible investor that is seeking to come in to Nigeria or stay in Nigeria. We address your issues, we assist you, we guide you. But again, like I said, we want our investors to make sure that they play by the rules. Where they operate in local communities, that they take community development and corporate social responsibility very seriously. They are the responsible taxpayers, all of that. Just play by the rules, and we are there to assist and guide you all.
Are you also willing to assist Nigerian investors beyond the foreign investors? Because you said
I said local and domestic, domestic and foreign.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Finally,
I just wanted to say that
finally,
again.
Honorable Minister.
Yes.
Finally, Honorable Minister, what is the fate of Ajaokuta company in the near future?
Why do you get? You keep going back to Ajaokuta, but I'll answer you. What is the fate of Ajaokuta in the
near future?
I'm looking at an Ajaokuta that is recalibrated, so to speak.
Okay.
All the units are functioning.
Okay.
I'm sure if you want to sell your house, for instance, you'll first of all give it a new coat, clean the environment, present it in such a way that it appeals to the buyer. That is what we are doing with Ajaokuta.
Okay.
We are cleaning up the place, getting those things that need lubrication being lubricated, and not really, not mechanically only.
Okay.
In terms of regulations, getting bottlenecks out of the way.
Okay.
There are 1-2 titan legal issues that need to be sorted out.
Okay.
Once we get all of that out of the way, Ajaokuta will certainly go into the best hands that will manage it profitably for both the country and the co-investor, and be used to transform the steel sector and boost industrialization, move us away from where we are to where we should be. Creating jobs along the line. And you know that where it is situated, there are some security issues around there.
Yeah.
I'm sure by the time it takes off fully and the youths are gainfully employed, it will take security down to
Would you want to give a timeline to this?
Why not? We are a very serious government.
Okay.
We are not approaching this with a laissez-faire. No. I will think that by the time this government takes the break, maybe the first 4 years after we go into elections and get re-elected and return.
The second phase.
Of course, yes.
You're very optimistic about that.
Well, that's
by the time
right.
we get to the second term, I think Ajaokuta would have gone into the hands of a profitable management.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. The steel industry is indeed the backbone of any nation, and we hope to see that sector revitalized in this country. Many thanks once again for joining us, Honorable Minister of State, State Development, His Excellency Uba Maigari Amadu. It was a pleasure to have you on the program.
Pleasure is mine. I enjoyed every bit of it.
It's Aisha Rimi, Executive Secretary and CEO, Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. We are cheering you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Of course, we appreciate Mukesh Sharma from Vulcan Jindal Steel Company.
Thank you. My pleasure being here.
Okay. And I also like to appreciate Farouk Aliyu, Chairman, Niger Extraction Steel Company. Thank you for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
And of course, our very own Dr. Emeka Okengwu. Thank you.
Pleasure. It's always an honor. Thank you very much.
For being a part of Good Morning Nigeria.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's take sports.
Victor Osimhen's Napoli will play Barcelona in the UEFA Champions League last 16. Osimhen and his teammates will be playing against a Spanish opposition for the second time in the competition this season. The Serie A champions lost at home and away to Real Madrid in the group stage. Meanwhile, Super Eagles defender Zaidu Sanusi and his FC Porto teammates will keep a date with Premier League club Arsenal. The first leg will be played in Porto, while the reverse fixture will hold at the Emirates Stadium. On the other hand, Umar Sadiq's Real Sociedad will be up against Paris Saint-Germain. The first leg of the Champions League round of 16 fixtures will hold on 13th and 14th. In golf, Tiger Woods believes he can still win on the PGA Tour, but will only play one event per month in 2024 as he continues his recovery from ankle surgery. The 15-time major champion has had a limited schedule since suffering a leg injury in a car crash in 2021. He carded a final round 61 alongside his 14-year-old son Charlie at the PNC Championship in Orlando on Sunday. Wood's last win on the PGA Tour was at the 2019-2020 Championship in Japan, which saw him equal Sam Snead's record of 82 tour victories.
All right, that's Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you for joining us. See you tomorrow. I'm Ian Ray-John.
And I am Ademola Adeoye. Thank you very much for watching. Do have a pleasant day.